If you like my videos, be sure to join this channel or my Patreon to get access to exclusive content. Hear realistic level up advice from me and other women with real world experience. The links to join are in the description box. Please like, share, and subscribe and enjoy the video. Hello, everybody. So, we are here with one of my supporters that goes by the screen name Rampaging Chipmunk. His real name is Zach. And we're doing this video because recently he left a comment under one of my live streams. And here is the comment you see on the screen. And he commented under a live stream where I briefly responded to some of the extreme divestors about their take on Chef Way. And they responded saying that Rampaging Chipmunk was not a real person and that I was pretending to be him and that I was speaking for white men. So I decided to bring him on so I can prove that he is a real person. And I figured, hey, well, since I'm going to have him on here, I should also ask him a couple of questions about his views on the space. So, Zach, thank you so much for being here and putting the rumors to rest and giving me some of your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I just can't believe that they thought that I was like an alt account of yours, because like just click on my account. It says like I think it should say like joined 2012. So like, okay, you've had a 11 years running alternate account that like occasionally pops up in your comments that you're using. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. And the thing is, I've seen you before in one of my live streams. Weren't you just in a Chrissy After Dark not too long ago?
Yeah, I've actually basically, and this might actually help to add a little bit of context too, is like how I actually stumbled across your channel and the kind of greater BWE space as a whole. So it started back in like honestly during lockdown in 2020.
Okay.
So the YouTube algorithm, it can be a little bit, it can behave in some strange ways sometimes. So, but basically what it was it was a bit of a string of like viewers who watched this channel also watched this channel. So that led me from like vegan YouTube to what I think is generally called commentary YouTube, which is basically just people doing commentary about YouTube itself, big YouTubers, some social commentary or whatever. And obviously some creators within that space are Black. And so all it took was me watching 2 or 3 of their videos, and suddenly you pop up in my recommended feed on YouTube. And then after watching a couple of your videos, suddenly it starts giving me like basically everybody else in the BWE space too. So that's kind of how I stumbled across this sector of YouTube. And so basically I kind of binged your channel over the course of like April and May of 2020. So I was putting together furniture. I needed something to listen to, and your content was both very interesting and very educational. You have really educated me about a lot of stuff that like I had never heard the term colorism before. Like I had like a vague knowledge of it. Like I seem to recall like reading like the one instance that comes to mind was like, I'm pretty sure I read a news story once about one of those story that you did a video on a long, long time ago. It was about like, I think it was an employee at Hollister got, she said she was either fired or didn't get a job because her skin was too dark or something like that. That hit mainstream news, I think, because I seem to have some vague recollection of that. But like aside from like that, I don't really recall ever hearing the term colorism before. So it was like very illuminating. Like I didn't understand or have any previous knowledge about like the whole skin tone hierarchy within the Black community or anything like that. It was very, very new to me. It was sad. It's one of those things like I'm very glad that I know what I know now from listening to your content.
So my question to you is realistically, how many white people do you think hear these conversations? I'm just curious.
More than a few, because and given how easily the algorithm, like it didn't take very much for the algorithm to kind of shoot me off over in your direction. What I can say is that it isn't hard to stumble across this space. I'll just put it that way.
Looking at this comment, explain this comment, like why you made this comment, and what, when you hear my commentary, I'm curious to know what differences you hear between me and the extreme divestors.
I think the interesting part of it is how it's kind of a little, the lack of self-awareness, or like the lack of kind of like being able to draw parallels, because they clearly observe like the Black Manosphere a lot and the style and tone of their rhetoric. So they know, and they, because they know that, they also, you would think, would be able to see like the faults in it. They should be able to see like the negative consequences that could arise for them. What they basically do is like just basically make a gender swapped version of like the most extreme parts of the Black Manosphere. The use of racial slurs and the very, very callous. It just sounds like the worst parts of the Black Manosphere that they hate so much.
You say that you've heard the Black Manosphere, use these racial slurs about Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in comparison, like, because I see some of the Manosphere still kind of do that, but they're like in the middle of this weird rebrand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
Where they're trying to like be more palatable and just a little bit more PC. So in your like observation, do you see more of that extreme language and those racial slurs coming more from the Black Manosphere or the divestors? I'm just curious what you see on your timeline.
I think that the Black Manosphere guys who get any sort of traction tend to avoid that sort of language. I'm sure there are still ones who do use it, but I think I would agree that the ones who are starting to get, who have a larger following, who have, or even the more recent ones who are started more recently to get traction, they seem a lot more just like you're kind of like you're just standard alt-right commentator. I'm sure that there are still very aggressive Black Manosphere guys who will use like violent language, racial slurs, and stuff like that. But maybe they are less so on YouTube, and or maybe that's more on other platforms. There's probably more likely just that they don't get. It's harder for them to get traction, and in some cases they may just be getting shadow banned. I mean, you
Yeah,
never know.
yeah. They just don't get the traction. That's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what it is. They used to back in the day. Now, when I first came online, woo, it was
Mm-hmm.
really bad. They were everywhere. It was terrible. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're like, and I don't know if you were aware, but not too long ago, the FBI was like investigating a man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they're kind of trying
It
to
was
calm
after
down.
that the subway incident in
Yep,
New York,
yep.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. So
Okay.
this is gonna be like, because I know the divestors are gonna hear this, they're gonna respond, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what they're gonna say is, well, this guy, this white man, is comparing us to the Manosphere, but the Manosphere, they are the ones killing Black women. They are the ones who are responsible for Black femicide. What we do is just on the internet. We are just, calling them names. It's no big deal. It's not harmful. What is the big deal? So what would you say to that?
And I do want to give them a little some credit, and also just the BWE space in general some credit, because it is more of a reactive
Yes, yes.
space. It's more, as I understand it, it sort of originated as a reaction to that earlier form of the Manosphere that was a lot
Mhm.
more overtly hostile.
Yes.
But realistically, I think that my greatest concerns with the divestor space honestly doesn't really particularly have much to do with the Black Manosphere space, and more about their advice potentially putting Black women in danger, not from Black men, but from racist white men. Because
Mhm.
I don't think that well, it's like they think that because I was against that, I'm against some of their talking points. That I clearly, that I must be an alternate account. They think that what they say is considered to be, accurate and appropriate by white men. That's dangerous thinking, because, well, for one, like, if the specific divestors who say stuff like that, if that's real, and that is their actual experience,
Mhm.
that says an awful lot about the white men that they have, that they are in contact with, or that
Mhm.
they have relationships with. Another similarity that I see between them and not necessarily the Black Manosphere, but just more colorist Black men specifically, is the sort of underlying self-hatred. Like, that's another way
Mhm.
that they seem to really have a lot more similarities than they probably would like to admit
Yeah.
with Black men, is that putting white men up on this pedestal. I think any white man who is going to identify with, endorse, agree with the use of racial slurs, a racist white person isn't going to make the gender distinctions that are often made by Black people here in these particular spaces on YouTube. Like, so if a divester is in a relationship with a white man who agrees with what they are saying about Black men, a white guy that they're with who agrees with them on that is probably, I would say 99% of the time, is going to think that about Black women too. White racists aren't going to make that gender distinction. And for them to say that, like, okay, well, white men identify with our talking points here and they agree with us that, like, Black men are subhuman or whatever, it's like, well, they probably, if they're agreeing with you on that, then they probably think that Black women are subhuman too. And if they think that, that's not the sort of guy that you should be engaging with, at all, if you know that about him, much less being in an actual relationship with him. That's just dangerous.
Now, what they're going to say to this is, oh, well, these are the white men we want. And any white man who doesn't agree with us, they must be liberal. They must be a SJW leftist. We don't want those kind of white men. So what do you say to that?
If that's their response to me saying that these conservative, like the alt-right MAGA type white men view just Black people as a whole as being less than, if that's their response, it's just like, oh, well, that's just a liberal talking point. That's a terrible response because it doesn't actually address my concern there. It's like, address the concern. Like, are you okay with your husband thinking that he's better than you, like, inherently? Because that is like a very, possible, that's very much a thing that could possibly happen if you go down that path and you just, like, accept. Imagine having children with that guy.
A lot of women in this space, let's just be honest, like, they are looking to be hypergamous. So they don't really associate, like, leftist white men with money.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, and they're gonna say, oh, well, we want the white men with money, and but I mean, I say the white man I'm dating, he's not, he's like moderate.
Honestly, I think probably my best answer to that would be, like, if it is like more of a money focused thing, it would probably just be, well, vet very carefully, just like, because I mean, there's plenty. I mean, I'm sure there's less, like, left leaning, rich people, but even just, like, politics aside, just. If you're dating a rich guy, just vet him to make sure he's a decent human being. I think that would probably be my advice. Politics aside, let's just, bring it down to dollars and cents. Then it's like, just treat him like you would any other, like, middle class guy that you would have otherwise, dated. There are just so many, other people, if you want to try to expand your options.
And one thing that stood out in your email was where you said that the Manosphere men will also attract those type of white women. If they, so can you expound on that a little bit?
There's another factor, aspect. They'll attract those type of women, and they'll also attract just desperate white women. Like, and this is something of a stereotype, but I've seen it enough both in, real life and also with coworkers, like the morbidly obese white woman with the just normal average looking Black guy. It's like, that doesn't say anything necessarily about her character, but she was just taking what she had.
Right.
So there's that I think the Black Manosphere has, but also, like, a decent white woman who hears the anti-Black woman rhetoric coming from a Black guy. Like, I think a decent and smart white woman is going to hear that, and can you really trust a man who is just willingly going to be dumping all over the group of women that, like, his mother and his other family members are coming from? Like, to me, that just screams, he can't be relied upon. He's not going to be trustworthy. Not to mention, just like, a decent white woman isn't going to be a racist, and a decent white woman is going to is going to hear that, and just that, again, that's just going to be a red flag, because it's going to sound like racist white supremacist rhetoric coming from a Black person, but still it'll effectively the same sort of thing. So that's going to be a red flag too for a white woman who has decent morals. But for like a alt-right racist white woman who does view Black people as being beneath her, she's going to hear that and she's going to agree with that, and she's going to probably view the Black man saying it as somebody that she can control. I think that sort of rhetoric does kind of send out a signal that, you know, he's not strong within his identity as a Black man, and that he is going to be, you know, it's white, it's, you know, the worship of whiteness basically.
Right.
And, you know, because of that, yeah, I'm sure that there could be some racist white women who will see that and think that, okay, this is a man who I can control, and that's on top, not to even bring up the whole fetish aspect of it too. So,
Oh God. Oh, that's a whole nother thing. And see, that's the thing. Like, I think some of these people, and I don't want to necessarily push the whole race play narrative,
mm-hmm,
but I have seen where some of them are actually into that.
mm-hmm.
Like, that's a real thing. I have seen the comments where some of the men get off on that. I think what's his name? That
There's that.
comedian.
I was gonna say I've seen, yeah, there was like there was a well, there wasn't, didn't Donald Glover, he made a joke
Donald
about it at
Glover,
the very
yes, that's
least.
his
Yeah.
name.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And so I think that deep down, some of them are into that. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. I think that some of them are really into that. And I think that, you know, for those kind of people, what you're saying is just not gonna matter. So just maybe they're made for each other. Maybe, you know.
I don't know. I
I just
mean,
want them to leave me alone.
yeah, that's
That's
the thing. I was just gonna say, it's like, yeah, well, you know, could they like, you know, just go hang out in their bedrooms and just do whatever it is that they want to do and like get off of YouTube?
yeah, exactly. Because look, I'm very realistic. I'm a realist. I actually date white men in real life. And I don't, you know, I don't associate myself with those kind of men that these divestors
Mm-hmm.
are seeking out. Like, I don't,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to push those type of men on my audience, because if that starts to happen and one of these women get hurt, because you mentioned like that's very dangerous for them to spew this rhetoric and
Mm-hmm.
attract these racist alt-right white men, that's gonna fall on me. They're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, Chrissy, you know, told us to get this type of white man, and then, you know, God forbid something happens to the woman and she ends up dead or something. That's
Mm-hmm.
gonna come back on me. And so, like, it was really refreshing to see your comment. We'll put that up here again, where, you know, you said you stay logical and you draw a clear distinction between yourself and them, because I want people to know the difference. Like, we're not the
Yeah, it's
same.
like there's difference between just saying, hey, you can date out if you want to, and saying you should only date white men. You know, like that's there's those are two very different things there. You know, so yeah, I
Right,
wouldn't have ever
exactly.
really lumped you in with the divester crowd. That doesn't particularly make any sense to me. I think you're pretty different from them.
Now I want to touch on what, like, something you said earlier about, because I've talked about this on my channel about like the kind of white women that black men usually get. I thought that was very interesting what you said about, like, you know, some of them being morbidly obese or not necessarily, you know, at the top of the beauty hierarchy.
It's hard to not notice it, you know,
Hmm.
because like honestly, since I've like kind of come across this space and, you know, become more conscious of stuff like this, I kind of like, well, I like people watching just in general. Whenever I go out, I just think that's kind of, it's people are just interesting just to see them, you know, observe what they're doing and stuff. But like
Hmm.
there, whenever I go like to the mall, I see many interracial couples, specific at just out and about. I'm not going to say that like I never see like black guys with attractive white women. That would be untrue for me to say that. I
Hmm.
definitely do. But I definitely do see like, you know, and the like just normal looking, in shape, you know, reasonably attractive black guys with white women who, you know, could stand to lose a few pounds, and they
Hmm.
just it stands out because they don't go together. Because, you know, like I've always been puzzled, and like I'll admit there's a coworker of mine. um she is, let me just put it this way, when she was pregnant, it I didn't know that she was pregnant until like she was very, very pregnant. She is that overweight.
Okay.
And she's married to, I've met her. Well, I haven't met her husband. I've just seen them together. And, you know, he's very, very tall, but, you know, average looking black guy. And it's just, they don't go together because it's like, I just honestly, I'm very health conscious, very nutrition conscious, and so I just look at the, you know, when I see two people like just honestly, just, you know, race aside, just two people in general who are like vastly different weights, and I'm like, y'all clearly have very different like how do y'all go out to eat together, and like y'all taste in foods and stuff have, and just your priorities with food have to be so different. Like that just seems like a
Yeah.
like that just seems like two things that just don't particularly, you know, it would be like a conflict there, but yeah, I mean, I definitely do see that. And then also, like, I think whenever I see black women with white men, they typically seem, in my opinion, they usually appear to go together better. You know, it's like they're usually like, you know, same, you know, age, same weight, same attractiveness level, just like, you know, any other, you know, couple that you look at, and they just make sense together. You know,
What would you say like is like, and I know this sounds like a dumb question, but I'm doing this for like the younger listeners.
mm-hmm.
Like as far as what black women can look out for with racist white men, some of it's very covert. Because what you said about the alt right, like, you know, a lot of these divestors, they'll say, "Oh, well, conservative white men, they agree with us, and they don't think like this, and they don't care what we say." And I'm like, but they're still very covert with their racism. They're not out with it all the time. You know, they're like
Mm-hmm.
the what's his name on Fox News? That guy. Oh God, what is his
Carlson.
name? Yeah, yeah, Tucker Carlson, and then
Mm-hmm.
you got Candace Owens. She
Mm-hmm.
uses a lot of those alt-right dog whistles, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yeah, I
And
think
so
that would
like
probably be my best advice. Would just be familiarize yourself with alt-right dog whistles and like pay
yes,
attention to
yeah.
what he said, what like a guy is saying is like, as far as like who he follows on social media and who he listens to on the news or whatever. Because if he's like following Ben Shapiro or whatever, all right, red flag. You know, I mean,
I just want to put it out there so that my followers don't get got, so that I
mm-hmm,
don't get blamed for some bullshit that I don't have anything to
mm-hmm,
do with. Because
yeah.
I don't date racist white men. I don't want to be affiliated with them. You know, I'm good.
And I'm just thinking about it more. I think so long as you like I said, so long as you have your sort of general familiarity with both dog whistles and like who the alt-right commentators are,
Hmm.
I think just from talking about current events to the guy in question, that'll probably tell you what you need to know.
So what do you say to the women who are going to say, well, because, you know, there's this idea that, you know, alt-right and conservative, two different things. It's not the same. You know, one is more extreme than the other. I just want a conservative white man who's not racist. And I know you said it's possible to have a conservative white man that's not racist, but how likely do you think that is?
There isn't too terribly much of a difference because like even if like the just what like more like pro-business or religious conservative type of conservative is unavoidably probably going to either endorse or tolerate at the very least the alt-right racist parts of it. Honestly, I think maybe just focusing on the money part of it might be well, that might help you out a little bit because I do think that it's
Yeah.
probable that like the you know the pro business side of it probably has less, you know, the wealthy pro business side of it probably has less of a likelihood of being racist, but
In your email, you said that they don't make the distinction between gender, but I know a lot of women in this space, particularly the divestors, they think that they do. They think that, you know, the racist white men in particular have mostly a problem just with black men.
that might be
And
it may be verbally they might that
mhm,
might it might be that black men come up more within their discussions,
uh-huh.
but I don't think it's real. I mean, you just look throughout like American history. Like, do you look throughout American history and see that there was any sort of real distinction made between by racist white people between black women and black men? I don't see it.
Yeah, with that said, do you believe in divestment? Do you believe that not just black women, but black men, do you think that we can actually divest from each other?
Well, first, I think one important thing is like to like kind of define divestment,
Mhm.
because like I think that's one thing is like that seems to be sort of undefined, or It varies
Well,
in definition from
yeah, I
YouTuber to
was gonna say.
YouTuber. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say the way and again, I'm not a divester, but the way I understand it is, Black women putting their interests first, putting race second to womanhood,
mhm,
um, being a sovereign being where we make decisions as an individual as opposed to uh, always centering the collective or thinking about the
mhm,
collective of Black people.
mhm,
And of course, some of that is also about dating non-Black men, but that really, in the original definition of divestment, it's not really about non-Black men. So I don't this
mhm.
like this new wave of divestment. It's all about, oh, you got to get a non-Black man. You can't be. So that was never what it was about. But it's pretty much just about putting yourself first, not being so consumed and invested in the Black community. That's pretty much what it
And
is.
I mean, like, when you're defining it that way, like
Hmm.
that sounds fine, and like as you were saying it, it's kind of what's striking me is that like it almost sounds like because like the way like your average white person kind of navigates through society, like your average white person, and this was just something that I kind of really became conscious of when I started, kind of thinking more so about race in America, is like when I first kind of heard the concept of of white as the default, the societal default, is
Hmm.
like I kind of became conscious of the fact is like, oh, I've, through my life never really had to navigate spaces with any sort of consciousness about like the way like the various, whatever groups it is that I am considered, that I am a part of, affecting my identity too much. I kind of like your word sovereign
Hmm.
is a little, or perhaps a bit melodramatic, but is actually pretty
Hmm.
accurate in that it's like I you know navigated through the world as an individual, developing
Hmm.
my interests and just the way I navigate the world as an individual. So I think if you're talking about it from that perspective, I think that here's the thing. I think that's both fine, and I also don't see why exactly that really contradicts with also being race conscious. Because it's like you can still like I don't see there being like a contradiction or being necessarily being a contradiction between, like, for instance, a Black woman who is you know in her personal life is not necessarily as focused on the race issue as much, is willing to date out and whatever, but
Hmm.
also is still, conscious of the way race works in America and
Right.
of the Black woman's plight or whatever other sorts of Black specific interests or issues happen to be of interest to her. Like I did. This was back in like early November. I went on a date with a girl who was honestly very much like that. Obviously, she was Black and
Hmm.
was willing to go out on a date with me, but was very much still had was very conscious of racial issues. Was very interested in like the kind of the academic side of it. Was very into bell hooks
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And like she's was a very cool person, and she was willing to go on a date with a white dude. I don't think that I don't think you have to be Herschel Walker when you when you date out and go like full, white supremacy doesn't exist and just go full sellout.
Right.
Like you
Right.
don't have to. That doesn't have to be what divestment means. I mean, you can still be like you can do whatever you want, like you can, if like political action or whatever is something that interests you, great. But if not, then that's fine too. I think that's, I don't,
Yeah.
it's
I've
just
never.
weird.
I've.
It seems so, it's like the like the actual divester YouTubers just, they just make things so weird and so extreme.
Hmm.
And it just,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel real. Like, I think it's like I said in my email, like I kind of hope that like this stuff just sort of, I don't know if I said this in my email or not, but like I just hope that it just like it just stays on YouTube. Like I
I
hope
do
this is
too.
just like a
Yeah.
YouTube thing, and that people don't actually try to go out and do this in real life, because it seems so bizarre and not real. And
Yeah.
for another thing, this is, and I think this might be kind of a perspective that I've tried to bring forth in comment sections before, with it, I think mostly in other channels, but the the worship of white men that they do too.
Mm.
It's like they the putting white men on a pedestal thing. It's like they do that hardcore too, and
Mm-hmm.
that's another thing that is, you're setting yourself up for failure. And just, I know that, just like, you know, I would feel so uncomfortable, like if I was, trying in a relationship with somebody who was like that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not, I'm just a man, like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not some sort of grand hero or angel who's going to come and rescue you from the problems of the Black community, or whatever it is that you think in your mind that I can do. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a guy,
Yeah.
and that, I think that's another thing about just their rhetoric that is just so strange. And if we want to draw more parallels, it I've heard people say it's like, you go from, that term blackmail worship, and they don't actually change the mindset. They just
Mm-hmm.
go over towards applying it to anyone else.
Exactly.
And that's another thing I would strongly advise against too, because if you going around with your blinders on, you just think, okay, this guy is white, therefore he's good. That's obviously not true, and you're setting yourself up to be to be taken advantage of just by a white guy, just as much as you would be potentially setting yourself up to be taken advantage by a Black guy if you don't hold him accountable for any sort of actions that he does that don't work for you in that relationship. So
Mhm, mhm. And they say, they keep saying, "Oh, well, we're not just talking about getting any old white guy, and we're not pushing that message. We're not worshiping white men." And it's like, yeah, it sounds like
I don't know.
worship.
Like, I was just saying, like, I've seen comments. You know, I have seen comments. I have seen usernames that
Mhm.
are it's like, no, that's no,
Yeah.
you're going into the worship sort of
Yeah.
mode there
Yeah.
a little bit, more than
And
a
then
little
it's like,
bit.
and that and that's why I wanted to bring you on. I'm like, because I'm like, "Do y'all think that no white men see this?"
And
Yes.
not all white men are going to be like me and actually say, hey, don't do that. There's
Yeah.
going to be some white men who are going to see that and see a sucker who can be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to be conscious of.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so happy you're here saying this because I get accused of worshiping white men all the time. And
You
I'm
do
like,
not. You very much do not. I've seen what that looks like, and that's not you.
I'm more concerned about what you said about it going offline, because a lot of these women will swear, they'll say, "Oh, we're not, this is not in real life. This is just the internet. This when I'm going about my everyday life, I don't say any of this stuff." And I'm like, "But what about your image? What about what you're presenting out there? Like that's out there forever. When you put it online, it's out there forever. You don't know who's seeing it. You don't know who's picking it up. All it takes is for one of these news stations to post, I don't know, a video of clip from a divester video calling black men bullet bags and apes, and it's over. It's
Hmm.
over.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about personally, because then I'm gonna get dragged in it. I might
Hmm.
get dragged in it. And so that's the kind of stuff I'm concerned about. I do think that a lot of these ladies know how to, what we call to do a code switch and turn it on, turn it off, and I don't
Hmm.
believe they're just going up to random white people and saying, "Yeah, black men are bullet bags." I don't think they're, I don't think all of them are doing that. I'm not dumb,
No, I don't think the
but
content creators are doing it, but
yeah,
I don't know. I'm going to give their viewers credit for intelligence, but I do know how young some of their viewers are.
yeah,
And it's like,
hmm,
it could just be a case of a young girl not knowing better,
yeah,
and
that's
just not
true.
thinking stuff through. So that's no, I think it is fair to be concerned about that.
Yeah, because I'm concerned about the image, and that's what I focused on a lot.
Hmm.
Representation, image for Black women, and the optics, and how certain things look bad. But I know how quick something can go viral, just like
Hmm.
that. And then
Well,
if that
heck,
happens,
the how long did it take for Passport Bros to go viral? Like, it
exactly,
took them literally
exactly.
only, like, I know they've been around, like, and I know, like, the white, trust me, I've been familiar with the white versions of them for
Mhm,
longer
mhm.
than the Black ones have been, really gaining traction on the internet. So yeah, trust me, I know all about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, as far as like when, like, the specific, well, I'll put it this way: when they started getting on my radar, was really
Mhm.
just a couple months ago, and all it took was just like that, one guy in Brazil getting,
Yep.
a little bit too carried away, and suddenly the entire thing's gone bust. So
Yeah, yeah. Do you think they're louder than the white guys, the white passport bros?
I first actually was exposed to the white manosphere like a long time, but back in like 2010 is when I want to say, and like it immediately just seemed stupid to me, so I didn't really pursue it any further. Let me put it this way, and this is something that I've found notable, or something that it took me a while to really figure it out when I was first watching your content.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's a point worth making, is that it seems to me that the Black Manosphere has a lot more cultural pull within the Black community than the White Manosphere does within the white community.
Mhm.
Because I would hear you talking about, and this is going back to like fall of 2020. It was around the time of the infamous average at best clip and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you started focusing some of your, not just specifically that clip, but you started focusing some more of your content around that time on responding to the Manosphere. And at the time, I hadn't really necessarily noticed, or it hadn't really clicked in my head that any previous content of yours was directed at the Manosphere. So then
Mhm.
I hear you saying these talking points, or referencing these talking points that I could recognize as Manosphere talking points, and
Mhm.
that struck me at first. I was like, well, that's Manosphere stuff that she's responding to there. And at my first, I was like, why is she giving Manosphere talking points credit? Because at that time I was just like, they're just a joke over in the corner of the internet. You can go to Reddit. You can go to Reddit and laugh at them if you want to, but like,
Mhm.
aside from that, they were just kind of like over there doing their own thing, being lonely. And so, but then it's like, I would kind of start to see, saw the rise of Kevin Samuels, and you're like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, this actually has
Mhm.
some degree of both pull and acceptance.
Yeah, yeah. So what you're saying, and I've said this before, that white men, with the manosphere rhetoric that they have, it's more underground. It's
Hmm.
not really put out there in the white community. It's not mainstream. It's not popular. It's not something that a lot of white men are just grabbing onto.
I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that has been gaining more traction within the past couple of years.
Mhm.
Um, but kind of on the backs of, I think Jordan Peterson is probably the main one that you
Yeah.
can point to, even though I don't really think he's like more, it's like he didn't start as Manosphere. It's like he just kind of got absorbed into it. I thought he just
Mhm.
started as, he was just like, I just view him as like another one of the million alt right commentators, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
kind of is Manosphere at this point too.
Yeah, he
But
is.
like, um, yeah, it was like I said, I've had knowledge of it since like 2010 or something like that, and yeah, it was just like, typically, I think it was just considered, at least from my perspective, as like just like lonely dudes on Reddit,
Mhm.
and bitter divorcees and stuff like that. And they would only really get any sort of attention at all, largely if like one of them did something really, really bad.
Mhm.
And then at that point, it's obviously not positive attention. It's just, oh, hey, look, here's this guy who spent too much time on Reddit and he went and did a bad thing. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like we're going to have this guy getting like a talk show on an actual TV network, or Like we're gonna have the thing with Kevin Samuels getting recognized after his death at the BET Awards or whatever. Like I don't think you're gonna see.
Right.
I don't think you would see that really at all with any of the I'm not even super familiar with like who the big names are at that point, but I think at this point within the White Manosphere, but as this space has been talking about, obviously Andrew Tate got stomped on quickly. And to be fair, he was easy to stomp on because he did bad things.
That's true.
It's not like if I think he would have been harder to stomp on if he had like a clean record and he was just a guy who was saying horrible things and not a guy who is saying horrible things and has done horrible things.
Right.
But yeah, like I think like the Manosphere, the White Manosphere was, as far as I understand it, was just like an internet sideshow, and it really never got beyond that. And unfortunately, I think it is growing in popularity, but you're never going to see I don't think ever any mainstream news sources or it ever really gaining a positive opinion outside of itself.
Yeah, because you're not like and this is not me putting white people on some pedestal or whatever, but you guys just don't elevate that in your community. It's not elevated. I mean, even mainstream news, I'm hearing talk about incels, which a lot of them, I mean, they're doing studies literally on incels. I heard this on Fox News. So it's like, to me, what the difference between like white people and their manosphere and black people and their manosphere, it's not deified in the white community. It's looked at, oh, this is a problem, this is something wrong, these incels are this is transferring to violence, something is like we need to do a study with these incels are rising in popularity, so we need to nip this in the bud. That's what it looks like is happening on the white side. I could be wrong about that, but that's what it seems like is happening.
I think that's fair.
Theirs is more underground,
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, and I don't think you're ever going to see anyone ever saying anyone with any sort of significance saying, well, the incels have a point or whatever. It's never gonna that's never gonna, those words are never going to be spoken. So and again, just bring it back to the Black Manosphere. I find that very disheartening and concerning, because nothing good comes of it. Like I think that's one thing, a conclusion I've kind of drawn about just the Manosphere, both of them together as a whole. It's like nothing good comes of them. They don't actually, if they actually offered positive change for men, then I think that they wouldn't be in the state they're in. They wouldn't be, just under, pariahs and jokes. They would actually have like a resume to point towards and say like, hey, our talking points are actually good and positive and help people. So I think it's sad. And it's like they clearly exist because there's a market for them to exist. There's a market for like the socially awkward guys who didn't do very well socially in high school or college or whatever, and they're just trying to figure life out. I think that's why Jordan Peterson got popular, because the daddy figure. And that's not even really to say anything particularly negative about anybody who needs that, or because they probably just never had that. So it's really sad that the Manosphere doesn't actually offer anybody anything really genuinely positive. It's such a huge missed opportunity. It's just a way for people to make money off of misery, and that's unfortunate. And it should definitely not be popularized or looked at as anything other than what it is, which is a giant scam.
I just have one little small question about what you said earlier about colorism. Obviously, we know that white people do differentiate black people based on skin tone, in the media representation especially. So when it comes to the dating part, do you ever see with white men who date black women, I mean, even yourself, do you differentiate between skin tone, or do you just see all black people as dark?
The two black girls I've gone out on dates recently, one was very dark skinned. She was actually from Tanzania. And other girl I went on a date with a couple weeks ago was more of what I believe would be considered to be brown skinned. I know the difference now. I've kind of from engaging with this space, I kind of understand more of because I didn't have any understanding of like the skin tone hierarchy or anything like that, and I didn't particularly have any real understanding of like the way Black people of different complexions were treated in the past either. So that was new to me. I mean, I think if a white man is going to be, cool with dating Black women, I don't really think that there's going to be really much of a thought given to skin tone personally. I mean, because it doesn't particularly matter. Like, if you're going to encounter any sort of like negative societal experiences because of dating a Black woman, it's going to be the same for the white guy regardless of the woman's particular skin tone, I would say. So, and yeah, I don't really I don't think, and that's just my personal perspective, is that I don't really think that and it's hard to generalize though, I'll put it this way. I think the optimal way to go about it is like, and I think there should be no real thought given to the particular skin tone. And I think any white man who is willing to date Black women but is going to be discriminating based on skin tone is doing it wrong, and really should rethink the whole the way he's going about it. Because if you look at like what colorism is sort of based on, it's effectively like it's basically Black people applying white supremacy upon themselves, and and like white people don't need to do it that way. They don't need to do it like, be specific about it. They can just apply white supremacy and just say, yeah, no non-white people. Like, you don't have to do, if you want to be discriminatory, you can just be full on discriminatory. Whereas in the Black community, there has to be more nuance there because there's not white people there. So if you want to be a white supremacist in the Black community, you're limited to colorism. So
right, exactly. Now, do you consider my platform, because this is something that Divester said, like, do you think I'm begging white men to represent dark-skinned women? Do you get that vibe from my platform?
I don't think you've ever really begged anybody to do anything. No, you just point stuff out, and you point out when things are good, and you point out when things are bad, and you point out the way you think things should be done. Like, I don't think I have never gotten a begging, vibe from any content that you've ever done about anything. And just kind of getting back to the colorism thing, because like I said, I had no clue about it, and I'm glad that I'm conscious of that now, because it's very unfortunate. It's one of those things that I just can't wrap my head around it. Like, I understand like how, like the how and of why it is the way it is. It's like, white adjacency is, or like, the closer to white, the better, or whatever. So like I get the how, but it's just like I am just so puzzled by the fact that it is a thing that is allowed to happen. It's just because it's like, I'm white and I can see how problematic it is.
Yeah.
It's just like it's so obviously problematic, and I just don't understand how in the year 2023 we can't get that pointed out and like make any sort of, and make, and just like say, hey, this is like clearly bad and wrong. And it's like it's like I said, it is Black people willingly applying white supremacy to themselves. Like, that's just a dumb thing to do. It is so strange. The thing that you've brought up, of course, plenty of times, the putting biracial women on a pedestal thing and whatever. It's like, that's like super problematic. And I don't know. That's been one topic about this from the sphere that I've just found consistently interesting, is the biracial dialogue.
I mean, are you hearing it from just our side, or the men's side, or just?
No, I'm hearing it. I'm kind of bringing, like, there's one example that comes to mind. And see, and this example isn't for women specifically. And I think that's it's just like, I'm not seeing it from the perspective of a Black woman. It's like, I can like see two biracial men in particular, is like then the differences between both the way they appear and the way that they are treated, and that would be Barack Obama and Derek Jeter. Obviously, Barack Obama is a very much a black presenting biracial man. You're not going to, you might be fooled into thinking that he's fully black if you didn't otherwise know. Whereas Derek Jeter, when towards the end of his career, when he was and he would, when his hairline started to go and he started shaving his head, you wouldn't necessarily guess looking at him that he was even biracial at all. He's more of a white passing biracial man.
Right.
So I think that's kind of my thing with it, is like I have a hard time making the super strong distinction of biracial isn't black, because it is so tied to visual presentation. Like I said, I was I like observing, like people watching, and I can actually I actually observed two different instances of, because now that I'm kind of more conscious of the whole like interracial marriage and interracial relationships, when I see them out in public, I just kind of make a note. It kind of pops out. Like I saw last week when I was at the mall, there was a black woman with her biracial teenage daughter, and like her daughter looked like if Emma Watson was biracial, very, very white appearing. But then it was like I saw today this white man leaving Kohl's with his biracial daughter, and she was very much black presenting, had a very black phenotypically black features, even had her hair done in long braids. And it was like, those two people are going to, both of them teenage girls, both of them are going to, they both obviously look biracial, but they both present differently, so it's, I personally just have a hard time saying like that like for instance that the girl I saw today, like I think she probably would be more like just light-skinned black passing, so it's like I have, and I'm not trying to tell anybody to say or do or to any particular way, like I understand this isn't my lane, it's just
and I've said on my platform that I think that once we get past the genetic conversation, like people are generally treated as what they look like. So you kind of are what you look like, and it's like, I hate to put it like that, because people are going to be like, oh, well, yeah, it matters who, culture and who your parents are. And that is true. Genetics matter. But like you said, Barack Obama, he looks more black, so he's going to be treated more like a black man. And that's just the way it is. And I remember when I had a space, I was going to create an underground space for dark-skinned women. And this one lady asked me, she said, well, Chrissy, I'm mixed, but I look unambiguously black. I'm dark-skinned, have kinky hair. I don't, fit the typical phenotype for a mixed woman. I said, well, you're in. You're in. So it's like, it all depends, for me anyway, what you look like. If you're mixed and you still look like an unambiguous dark-skinned black woman, you're black.
I'm very happy to hear, like, that's it. Well, it's exactly what what I would expect from you as a very logical person, because that just makes sense. That's not like a one size fits all dogmatic sort of thing to say, and that's like, I do, like, I have heard the very dogmatic, both sides of that being very one-sided and dogmatic, and it not really making much sense, so that's a really, really good answer, I think.
And people don't like when I say that, because a lot of black people are caught up in like genetics and who has one black parent instead of two, and I'm just like, what matters most is the look, but I think we're not ready for, I don't know if we'll ever move past the genetic thing, and the conversation about that, but that, to me, that's the next step.
Well, I mean, I'll admit, I've seen, and you probably know who, but people in this, a particular person in this particular space who just can't get past the whole genetic thing, and it just keeps coming up, and it just keeps coming up, and it just keeps coming up.
Okay, so we'll end with this question. What do you say to people who are going to say, Mr. White Man, this is not your business. These are black issues. This, you have nothing to do with this. Stay out of this conversation. And obviously over here, I encourage black women to date out, if they want. And so that's why you're here. But for the people who are going to say, Chrissy, you shouldn't have brought him on. He's white. He doesn't, know anything about this. Keep our issues in house. We don't need to bring outsiders in. What's your response to that?
I will say that if the topic of interracial dating was never brought up, then that would be a very, very fair thing for me to say, or for them to say. Like, there are other platforms that are focused on Black related issues that I've come across, and like, I just have never felt like that was my sort of space, like, to be in. But as long as, like, given that interracial dating is brought up, and most specifically when we're talking about the divestors, given that they bring white men up so much as like the best option or whatever, or the superior option, and just the way that they go about presenting white men, I think that does give me a lane in which to come in and make a comment that is actually valid and useful, and could potentially both bring another perspective on it, but also still be fair and still be helpful to people who might be just considering just all the information that is being brought into this space.
Well, thank you so much, Zach, for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome. This has been super duper cool. I've been really, really fascinated by this whole space ever since I came across it, and I've learned a great deal of very useful information from this space. And I can, honestly say that even your channel specifically, like, you have significantly improved just the way that I see the world. Like, I'm a better person from having stumbled across your channel. So,
wow, thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I hope that people can find value in what I've said, and I hope that the inevitable firestorm isn't too terribly bad. I know it's going to happen. I know that this is going to be one of those videos, one of those very, the conversation starting type of videos. So I hope you don't get too many angry emails.
Well, I'm used to it. I've been doing this it'll be 8 years in May, I think, April or May.
Nice.
So I'm used to it. Yeah, it is what it is. I expect it. I don't think I've ever brought a white guy on though, so this is different. It's definitely different, but I've been doing interviews for the last few months, so it's kind of right on time. So it is what it is, and I just wanted to bring you on and prove that you are a real person.
Yep,
You're not
I'm real.
fake. Yeah, I'm not sitting there making up fake white man accounts and commenting under my videos. I don't do that. I don't have time for that. I got too much to do. So yeah, he is real. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch up with you in the next video. Bye.
If you like my videos, be sure to join this channel or my Patreon to get access to exclusive content. Hear realistic level up advice from me and other women with real world experience. The links to join are in the description box. Please like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy the video.